Hi, everybody. My name is Ann Edenfield-Sweet. I'm the Executive Director of Wings for Life, and I am so glad you're with us tonight. We have just the most wonderful speaker, Dr. Roxanne Morris, and she is going to talk about something that all of us need to know about. And to my knowledge, about the last 10 years, we've been talking about these things. They're called Adverse Childhood Experiences, or ACEs. And Roxanne has been the expert at the Albuquerque Public Schools for many, many years, teaching and sharing and trying to help teachers help their students. And now she's taking over a new position out in Santa Rosa, New Mexico, dealing with the same thing and trying to help them with a virtual school. That is very exciting. So I am thrilled that we have Roxanne with us today to talk about this very, very important subject that all of us need to know about. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm so glad to see you here tonight. So glad that you came to join us to learn about ACEs, to learn about yourself. Probably that's the most important thing that we're going to talk about today, is how do we know who you are? How do you know who you are? How do you know how your past affects your future? So for our time together today, we're going to identify challenges and successes. We're going to learn about adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. We're going to talk a little bit about how you encourage others and how you encourage yourself, and how you become resilient in life as we go through our challenges. Everybody has challenges. Even I have challenges. This last year with COVID, we've all had significant challenges. Then we're going to have some time with Ann to reflect and to respond about what we learned today and how to go forward. You know, maybe you don't know, but you do know that you have people and resources to support your journey in life. You have, even though you may not think you have, relatives that help you, you do have relatives. You may not think you have friends or people around you that will help you, but they will help and listen to you. And you can be a good helper and a listener to other people. There are community supports as well to help you on your journey. When we hit bumps in the road, like adverse childhood experiences, we have to have a lifeline. We have to have people and resources to reach out to. Another thing, my wish for you tonight is to know that there's information that can help you understand your situation and your solutions. You know, we've all been through bumpy parts, and we've all been through great parts in our life. This time is a time for you to reflect and to figure out some resources, both internally, wherever you happen to be seated right now tonight, and for in the future. I want you to feel connected and loved and able to meet any challenge going forward today. Let's play a guessing game. You all know who Ann is, and now you have a new face for me, Roxanne. Let's do a Perception Matters guessing game. I want you to think about if you were looking at me, thinking about Ann or any of the people on this screen that you see before you, tell me, can you tell from just looking at someone whose parent served in a war? That would be one of mine. Maybe as you raise your hand or think about that in your family and the people that you know, can you tell it from their outside? Can you tell what happened? Do you know that past studies have shown that folks that have served in war or experienced a threat of war, that generational trauma, there's been studies that generational trauma is passed down from generation to generation until we deal with those issues that came about from war, poverty, and some other adverse childhood or adverse experiences in our life. Looking around, even at the pictures you see on your screen, can you tell whose family came from poverty and wondered where their very next meal came from? That would be me again. I know. By now you're going to get that answer right. But think about it. You can't tell from the outside that as a teenager, we didn't have food in the house and we had a dirt floor and one light bulb hanging up. My parents were divorced at the time. Life was tough. However, as you look at that experience, that was an adverse childhood experience. I'm sure some of you have had that experience as well, wondering where your next meal comes from. What about who came from a non-safe home life? One where there might be abuse or neglect, one where there might be neighbors that are violent, drugs, shooting, alcohol. All of those also are adverse childhood experiences. You can't tell it from the outside, can you? What about whose family member has a mental illness? Can you tell that from the outside? Those kinds of experiences also affect children as they're growing up. And as you grow up as adults, if you think back, those experiences affected you too. What about immigration? Whose family immigrated to a new land? Well, you got it again, mine as well. My parents, my mom was from England directly. She immigrated over on a boat, but you'd never necessarily know that looking at me. So I want you to know that you have adverse childhood experiences. Probably, so do I. And a lot of us have more than one. There's a whole list of adverse childhood experiences on the web as well that you can look up. There's some tests to tell you as you check off a list what your adverse childhood experience chart is and how many that you have. But I bet just from this list here today, you could probably name a few. Most people have had them. It is a matter of how you deal with them, I think, that really matters in the long run. We all do have a past. We all have a future. Realistically, your past does not control your future. The decisions you make today, if you make a decision based on looking behind you or in the rearview mirror, then all of those things tend to affect you. And they will continue to affect you until you tackle them, until you confront them, until you really think about how to solve those experiences from the past. I want you to think about your future. If you're like me and you have adverse childhood experiences, more than one in a lot of cases, especially with me, we have to think about how we're going to tackle those, how we look at a bright future. You know, life wasn't always easy for me either. My mom and dad did not graduate from high school. They got through 8th grade. They struggled in school. They moved around a lot in poverty when I was little. And my dad was an alcoholic and abusive. So here we were in this environment, and then Roxanne wanted to go to college, wanted to graduate from high school and go to college. My parents weren't really thrilled about that. They saw no point in that. No need. Why would you bother? So it was an uphill battle for me, full of storms and trials and my family members pulling me back and saying, you know, you can't do that. I don't think you can do that. Why are you doing that? So when you have people like that in your life, face them and tell them, I can do this. I want to do this. It matters to me. My mom finally came around and did a great job of supporting me in the end, but it was a journey for her. It wasn't an experience that she was used to. So remember that perception and what people know and how they base their lives on themselves also reflects to you. That should keep you focused. You should have a plan for your life to try to figure out what it is you're wanting to do and where you're going, even though your adverse childhood experiences might be trying to pull you back from time to time. Think about this. Who do you listen to? Do you listen to yourself? Tell yourself you're wonderful, you can do it, You've got the strength and courage to do it? Or do you listen to that voice in your childhood or the teacher from past that said you can't, you're never going to be good enough, or maybe some event happened in your life where those folks are ringing in your head? Who are you listening to? Make sure that you're trying to listen to the voice that's positive, the voice that overcomes the adverse childhood experiences. How do you want to get better is up to you. It's not really the words that are in your head playing over and over from somebody else outside of you. It really is you reaching out internally, reaching inward internally, and going forward. These adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, have been studied for years. The study came from Kaiser Permanente. In 1995 to 1997, Kaiser Permanente, this big research group, did a study. Lots of things were coming up in youth, and lots of kids and people were getting sick. And the researchers could not figure out why these events kept happening, why these health events, why these pregnancies, why drug abuse and suicide kept happening to a group of people. So they studied adverse childhood experiences, or in technical terms, potentially traumatic events that occur in your childhood between 0 and 17. Notice I said 0, because some of this stuff happens as the baby is born. There's been studies now about the trauma involved in a child pre-birth. The original study found that about 61% of adults surveyed across 25 different states reported that they have experienced at least one ACE. 1 in 6 said that they had experienced 4 or more types of ACEs. That'd be me, and I bet you a lot of you are in that same boat too. It doesn't doom us forever. It just gives us a framework to think about our experiences and how they affect both our mental health and our physical health and our future. Let's talk a little bit about the types of adverse childhood experiences. These aren't necessarily in nice, real neat, defined boxes. You have abuse, but abuse probably, as you know, comes in a lot of different flavors. You've got physical abuse, you've got emotional abuse, and sexual abuse. But you can probably think of a number of ways that people have abused other people. There's also bullying in there, right? Then you have neglect. Especially in the ages of 0 to 17, a child who is neglected, left alone, not talked to, physically neglected, not fed, is on the rise. Especially we found with COVID this last 18 months that neglect is high, specifically in New Mexico, but across the United States. Emotional neglect is right in there as well. You can have a child and never talk to the child. That's emotional neglect. Household dysfunction. My household had dysfunction. I think a lot of households have dysfunction too. However, it's on the edgy part of dysfunction. For example, there's divorce involved, substance abuse, including drugs and alcohol. The mother was treated violently, actually the father in some cases too. We have folks that are incarcerated, which impact the single family situation, and you have mental illness that all make up household dysfunction. These are listed on the Center for Disease Control as types of adverse childhood experiences. You will find, if you ever did the survey, that there's a lot more of them defined a little bit more finitely. How do adverse childhood experiences affect you or affect your children or people that you know? Well, a lot of different ways. For example, the number of cases of traumatic, starting at the pink arrow going, or pink circle going around, traumatic brain injuries, fractures, and burns are high in children that have had ACEs. So we're not quite sure whether they're in a fog sometimes, and that's why they have lots of fractures and burns, or because they're in the middle of the adverse childhood experience and they're experiencing those fractures and burns from a perpetrator. That person that had ACEs also has a high level of depression, anxiety, suicide, and PTSD symptoms. A person who has experienced adverse childhood experiences also has a high rate of unintended pregnancy, pregnancy complications, low birth weight rate, and fetal death. The ACEs also affect infectious disease rates. Chronic diseases such as cancer and diabetes are high. When you have, the more ACEs you have, the more chances of cancer and diabetes are likely, says this study. Risky behaviors are apparent as well, like alcohol and drug abuse, and educational opportunities are lower the more ACEs that you have. Think about these statistics. These absolutely blew my mind. The exposure of adverse childhood experiences, any of the numbers of things that I listed before, neglect, abuse, the exposure to adverse childhood experiences and trauma causes 7 out of 10 deaths in our youth, ages 0 to 17. That's a lot. That's a huge effect. There's a 20-year difference in life expectancy of people that have had significant amounts of adverse childhood experience. You've always said you wanted a longer life, right? You want your kids to grow up and have 20 years added to their life. How do we do that? We either stop inflicting adverse childhood experiences, or we try to help people change their path and their resiliency as they deal with adverse childhood experiences. These folks are 12 times more likely to commit suicide, 2.5 times more prone to depression, and they have triple the chance of cancer. Now, I don't know about you, but as I look, since I experienced all of these, I look at my children and I think to myself, I don't want to pass on that legacy to my kids. I want them to live 20 years longer. I don't want them to have cancer. So I need to be very careful with how I pass on my trauma to my own children that I teach or children that I have of my own. The science from the Amen Clinic, that's where these brain scans are taken, shows the actual realistic effect. These are actual 100% real brain scans of ACE and how adverse childhood experiences affect the brain. This study took a look at these brains, and you notice that the brains look a lot like Swiss cheese. And you think to yourself, well, I've always heard the brain can't change. Nothing's going to change my brain. It's blown, right? That's not correct. Because although science says that ACE affects the brain, science also says that you can fix it, and I'll show you that here in a minute. How does ACE affect behavior and the brain? Well, when your brain is full of Swiss cheese like that, you're going to have some of these trauma responses, or you're going to see them in your children, in your own children, or your grandchildren, or your nieces and nephews. This person that might be experiencing ACEs might have a fight. So when they get stressed out or they're in an unfamiliar situation, they might want to be angry, or not want to, but they get angry, they get aggressive, they move towards the danger rather than away from the danger. They might feel like they're going to flight and run away. They panic in situations, they can't breathe, they have anxiety and fear. A lot of times, folks that have experienced ACEs freeze. They're numb inside. They really just don't want to be there. They're kind of stuck. They collapse in a corner. They're not very talkative. Or they fawn. They're very people-pleasing. They're a doer. They want to do everything for everybody, and they wear themselves out. They have a hard time setting boundaries. So those are direct behaviors that research shows are a possible result of ACEs. Remember I told you that the brain can be fixed? Well, the brain can be repaired. Look, this is an actual scan again of a healed brain. Remember the brain that had Swiss cheese? Well, this one is the brain that's been fixed. The fixes here are things like eating right, exercise, praying, reading, meditating, being positive, being resilient. That's what helps us, as well as, I got to put God in there. I graduated from Oral Roberts University, and I learned in my journey, on my pathway, that God and God's Word really helped me along the journey. I had to remember not what my mom said about me, not what the people around me said I couldn't do and wouldn't do and shouldn't do, but I had to remember what God said that I could do, that I am a child of God, that I am blessed, and I have many, many things that I'm blessed about. And I have to remember those things. So as you think about going forward and the things that you love to do and you want to be resilient at, remember you've got to fill yourself. We need to tell ourselves and others about our positivity. We need to be resilient and let people know that our journey has not been easy and that you can do it. You know how to do that. You can figure it out. You need to find phrases and words along your journey that matter to you. Put them on a board. Write them down on a piece of paper. These are some things, a list of things that you can do to help yourself get through ACEs. You're not going to get over ACEs. My past comes back to haunt me. Yours will too. All right? But how do you get through that? Remember that everybody needs a nurturing touch and a hug. The research shows that humans need 10 meaningful touches a day. Make sure that you're patting your kiddo on the head or you're giving somebody a warm embrace of some sort. Pray and study the Word of God. He will direct your steps. He will make a difference in your life. He will change your pathway. Say you're sorry. Forgive yourself for, making dumb mistakes and going down wrong paths sometimes, but also give others the benefit of the doubt and forgive them as well. You can't grow with anger growing inside you. It doesn't work that way. Building resiliency is important. Read books. Pick a favorite book. Read the book. Read it all the way through. Take notes. Find some favorite quotes in those books. Remember to take care. You have 3 parts of your body: mind, body, and spirit. Get out and exercise. Feed your mind and feed your spirit. Joy and laughter. Watch some funny videos. Watch some funny YouTubes. Laugh at people, laugh at yourself because, everybody else is probably laughing, so you might as well just join in and laugh when you do silly things. Diet, exercise, and self-care. ACEs can be, especially with all the statistics we covered today, can be a daunting thing. You can think about them and think, I'm never going to get over that. Well, that's not true. You can get over it. But think about it before you speak to yourself or to others. Think about this think chart. Ask yourself, is what I'm saying about to come out of my mouth true, helpful, inspirational, necessary, or kind? Make sure that what you're saying to yourself answers those questions positively and what you say to others. Life's a journey. It's not all full of flowers. So be positive, kind, supporting, helpful. I appreciate your time tonight. I'm so glad that you joined us here. I'm glad for Ann to host this session.
Wow. I knew it was going to be awesome. It is. And And you know, the encouraging thing is that so many people have had really difficult lives, but that's not the end of the world. That's not the end of the story. And Roxanne is proof of that. My gosh, she's got a PhD and so successful in life, and she has turned all her energy into dealing with life in a positive way, and you could do that too. I'm going to share a story. You know, I always like to close with a story. So this story is called Hammer and Nails. There once was a little boy who had a bad temper. His father gave him a bag of nails and told him that every time he lost his temper, he must hammer a real nail into the back of the fence. Well, the first day, the boy had driven 37 nails into the fence. Well, over the next few weeks, he had learned to control his temper, and the number of nails hammered daily gradually dwindled down. He discovered that it was much easier to hold his temper than to drive those nails into the fence. Finally, the day came when the boy didn't lose his temper at all. And he told his father about it. And the father suggested that the boy now pull out one nail each day for every day that he was able to hold his temper. Well, the days passed, and the young boy was finally able to tell his father one day that all the nails were out of the fence. Well, the father took his son by the hand and led him to the fence. And he said, "You have done very well, my son, but look at those holes in the fence. The fence will never be the same. When you say things in anger, they leave a scar just like this one. You can put a knife in a man and draw it out. It won't matter how many times you can say, 'I'm sorry.' That wound will still be there. And remember, son, a verbal wound is as bad as a physical one." Well, friends are very rare jewels indeed, and they make you smile and they encourage you to succeed. They lend an ear, they share words of praise, and they always want to open their hearts to us. This story about hammers and nails, I love this because it's just so true. But let's not even start putting those nails in the fence. Let's try to stop doing that. Let's try to just live our lives to where, as Roxana was telling us, let's think before we speak. And let's try to think loving, kind thoughts. And if we can do that, it's going to better our lives and the lives of others. So now we are going to soon go to breakout rooms. First of all, I want to let you know that next week we have a very unique speaker. He was a man who interned with us, did some community service. He was a 30-year member of the Sereno gangs. Very interesting man that I really came to like. He is going to teach us about gangs. He's trying to turn his life around, and he has left the gang. So he's going to talk about things that he wished he had told himself at 12 prior to getting into the gang, and then what gang life is like and how he has been able to get out of that situation. Now, also, for those of you who are listening today, and if you're on Facebook or Zoom, you can also contribute. But if you are going into the breakout rooms with us, October 22nd, Wings is going to celebrate our 25th and our 26th anniversary. And we have a wonderful man from One Community Auto who is donating a car to us. And we are going to give that car away to some lucky recipient, somebody who listened to any one of our programs, either our Wings for Life program or our weekly, 3 times a week, our Wings LifeWise family workshops. You could go to our website and find out when all these things are. But every Monday night, certainly you're here, you could join us. But if you're on Facebook or YouTube, send me an email. It's Ann, A-N-N, Edenfield, like a Garden of Eden, but a field. So Ann Edenfield at Wings Fly. So we're going to fly, but you better spell it right. It's F-L-I, so wingsfly.org. In that email, if you're doing it by Facebook, if you're listening by Facebook or YouTube, Put your name, your phone number, your email address, and a sentence or two about what you listened to and what you took away, some of the takeaways. For those of you who are joining us here by Zoom, just go to the chat room and put in your name, your phone number, and your email, and we will enter you in the drawing. This goes for any of the guys or women. If you're listening from the prisons, that works for you too. Have somebody put all that information into the chat room or send me an independent email. We'll put your names in the link, and on October 22nd, we're going to do that drawing, and then I get to travel somewhere, maybe certainly in the state of New Mexico. We're only going to deliver it in New Mexico, so if you're listening from outside of the state, you'll have to come here to get the car. But otherwise, even if you're in prison, it can go to a loved one, and you will have a car when you get out. We're going to pay 3 months of insurance, all the licensing, and the registration and all the taxes. So all you will have to do is start picking up the expenses after 3 months. So we're so happy that you're joining us tonight, learning about this important topic called ACEs. And for those of you with Zoom, stay tuned, because we're going to go to breakout rooms. Thanks, everybody, and good night.